Hi, welcome back to another video feature of the Immersive Roles Handbook. Today I'm at the President's Hall of Fame in Orlando, Florida, as maybe you can tell from some of the presidents and other figures represented here. So I'm going to give you a tour of this very small museum here in Orlando, Florida. So let me show you some of the sights and sounds. Okay, and as we begin the tour here, you can see there are some curious sights here. Mannequins like John Wayne, and you'll see Barney Fife later. So there are certainly representations here that you might not expect in a president's museum. I was the only visitor on the day of my visit, and actually there was a couple that came in just when I was leaving. I'm taking you to the outside here to give you a sense of just the character of the place. This was created many years ago by a couple, the Zweifels, and I had read that they've actually been featured on numerous shows, Good Morning America. They've met presidents and so forth, and they visited the White House in order to create the replica that you'll be seeing inside. The website indicates it's the President's Hall of Fame, but as you'll see here as well, there's also a sign that says the House of Presidents. So perhaps the name had changed over time. I'm not entirely sure. You can see there's, it's very eclectic, as I mentioned, or I will mention in a video just coming up here, some commentary that, is reminiscent for me of Robert's Roost and some of the Juan Pollo restaurants in terms of just the eclectic creation, the eclectic nature of all the artifacts that they have at this particular site. I believe that might be Barack Obama. I'm not sure on the outside. Doesn't really appear to be a likeness. Statue of Liberty there as well. And as you can see, the exterior grounds, are somewhat, perhaps haven't been updated in a while. You have the Mount Rushmore representation here as well. And certainly a lot of thought and creativity, you'd have to say, went into the creation of both the exterior spaces and, as you'll see, on the interior as well. Okay, I was just having the opportunity here to look at some of the video that I shot during my visit to the President's Hall of Fame. And as I think you'll see in this video, it's an intriguing space. It's one of those up there with some of the Juan Pollo stores, Robert's Roost down in Southern California, that I think really offers a very unique take on theming on a museum. It was hard for me to describe, as you'll see in the video, exactly what this space is, but it has some really intriguing aspects to it. A lot of things I didn't quite understand or get on my first view of the museum. But again, I will take you through and look at some of the interesting things here, collections, everything from plates, again, all the mannequins, all sorts of White House and presidential memorabilia that is presented for the guest here. And at the end, I'll show you this, at the end you get a ticket, or I got a ticket, to insert here a token into this George W. Bush ventriloquist type
sacrifice will reap great benefits if you listen to these words of wisdom from the great President George W. Bush. Best place to find a helping hand is at the end of your arm. Yep, you gotta work hard for your happiness. So go on now, take your two hands, get more cash out of your pocket, and let me tell you more about your future.
Okay, and I didn't do that, but I did get my fortune there. So one of many intriguing things that I experienced at the President's Hall of Fame. But let me take you back then and show you some of the video that I shot during my visit to this interesting attraction in Orlando, Florida. Okay, so we're taking a look here then at the first part of the museum. Again, a very small space. Basically, this one small room, a gift shop on the opposite side, and then the very large room where you'll see the White House replica. So this first room had a lot of different displays, including the voting booth, and you see many of the presidential mannequins. There's also the Oval Office podium, sort of a miniature version of that, as you can see. And I didn't have a chance to determine exactly how they source all the material. I mean, certainly it would be expensive to collect a lot of the material they had in this museum. And what I've done here is to try to leave some of the audio up so you can actually hear some of the ambient sound. Again, we're just looking at the first room that you see, this reconstruction, this model of the building of the White House. And one of the things I really liked about the museum, and this is something to be said of museums that have a more folk quality to them, like this one, is that maybe there's a little less emphasis on perfecting everything. Professional museologists and people who are, experienced with museums take a much different approach. And I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but certainly when seeing something like this, again, making a comparison to, say, Robert's Roost or what you see in some of the Juan Puello stores or museum spaces as well, is a much different sense of connection to space, to design, to the collections themselves. And I just have to say it's, I guess, somewhat enjoyable, and heartwarming to see something like this, because you just see a totally different side that you wouldn't maybe expect if you went to the more professional museum. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, you see things like Barney Fife here represented a really extravagant collection, you could see, of some of the presidential figures. You're going to see FDR here, and I think I'll play the sound for you here. You can hear it. And I noted during my visit that some of the audio wasn't working exactly correctly, and just interesting to see some of the audio animatronics here and some of the sync issues with the audio. But again, at a different level, if we take it, to this level of concept, and even, if you will, an existential value of looking at material culture in a museal space like this, there's something to be said for this, right? I mean, it's different again than what you would experience in a more professional museum context. And you're looking here at some of the additional sites of the mannequins. You have everyone from George W. Bush there to Reagan and Hillary Clinton. It's a space that when you observe and have a chance to look at, there's just so much to the space. Again, other than this giant model of the White House, which is pretty impressive, there were often times where I wondered, exactly why was this, JFK mannequin there, or why did they choose some of the collections to be located in some of these places that you see. But just overall, I think the appeal of this space is the fact that it gives us a much different sense of, wouldn't call it theming, I guess, although you could certainly say that there is a strong presidential White House theme throughout this space. But it's trying to then, in a sense, bridge the gap between a museum and a local tourist attraction. And I have to say that in reading some of the social media accounts, going to Yelp and TripAdvisor and so forth, I think, people appreciated the space. Generally, there was certainly another population that suggested that the space felt like a tourist trap. And I think it's a rather tricky distinction if we start talking about something like a tourist trap. And certainly I would say Orlando is known for many such spaces. When you're competing with the big theme parks of Universal and SeaWorld and Disney, of course, you do have to do something to stand out in the crowd. And I think there's the sense that going up and down parts of Kissimmee and other parts of Orlando, the same probably is going to be said, say, of Pigeon Forge and so forth. Here's a butler mannequin you could see as I'm walking around getting a tour here of the main room of the President's Hall of Fame. But in any case, to go back to this point about tourist traps, and actually here, we have to go into the bathroom. This is quite, hold that thought for a second. I thought this was quite interesting going in here. And so, as I was saying, looking at the bathroom itself, there were these interesting floral pieces and, again, things, Christmas displays that maybe I didn't exactly understand in terms of their placement. Here's a series of interesting mock-ups. Actually, I think I took some rather strange shots with my camera here, maybe going around, and for some reason I found this amusing, I guess. You'll see some of the shots later. But let me go back to this point about the tourist traps I was trying to get at. So again, when you're competing with other spaces like the big theme parks, in this case in Orlando, you have to do something to stand out in the crowd. And I think it's maybe a little unfair for people to say a space like this or any other, Gatorland. I know I'm trying to think of the famous places in Orlando, the House of the Future, which is no longer there, any kind of iconic gift stores that are shaped like giant animals or giant citrus fruit or whatever. This is kind of odd. I just saw this baby climbing out of the Oval Office desk here. Again, things like this that really strike me as unique and quirky, and if not surreal at some level. But again, I think it's a little unfair. And so again, I think it's a little unfair to create this dichotomy, or rather hierarchy, between high and low culture, or to say that one space is a legitimate space of tourism like a theme park and another space like this maybe is a so-called tourist trap. And I just think that speaks maybe of social class distinction, of taste, cultures, and so forth. So it's perhaps a little unfortunate. We should maybe resist that in spaces like this or Robbers Roost, where we can appreciate something surreal and different and conceptual in terms of what's happening. So this is one of a few different Oval Office mock-ups, and the interesting thing to me was there was a historic phone, as you can see here, and then also a more contemporary phone. So I set my camera up and I took it, and that doesn't have a cord, as you can see, which is a little strange, and I don't think I'm going to be getting any calls, important calls from Putin or someone, a world leader, to tell me of some imminent crisis or whatever. But one of the things I think that you can see in a space like this is I've tried to intersperse some of the material culture, artifactual stuff going on around this giant mock-up of the White House. Other little things, some of them weren't working, like this here. Some of the audio-visual elements I noted weren't exactly working. I'm trying to see if this one did work. It wasn't. And I did note at the front of the desk where you pay when you go in, that they were asking, or I think a little later as well here, they were asking for volunteers. Here's another media element you can see, or a light element. They were asking for volunteers, so the suggestion is that they don't maybe have the capital to sustain themselves, and thus I think it's probably acceptable to say if some of the things aren't working, you could understand this if this is more a labor of love versus a professional operation that has full staffing and people who can come in and problem solve all the technological issues that were going on during the day of my visit. And I should note that I received actually an annual pass. That's one of the things. I think it was $10 to $15 for admission, and you receive some gifts at the end. And also I was notified that I actually qualified for an annual pass. I'm not sure if everybody gets that privilege or not, but I thought that was kind of interesting and nice. Again, something they can do as a smaller attraction, a smaller museum, versus a theme park where $10 is not even going to get you a Coke, say, in most Universal or Disney theme parks. And so that's kind of a nice element I find in a space like this. And so here we're having the opportunity to really see, I think, what is the highlight of the President's Hall of Fame. It's this incredible model, and you just get that sense of how much time, effort, and artistry went into this. And again, if you read the earlier plaques, and I did have a chance to talk to one of the docents, a guide who was there during my visit, not only is it a labor of love, but it's something, this White House model, that has been recognized by Discovery Channel and presidents. There's a picture of the founders of the creators of the model and the founders of this museum with President Ford and so forth. So you do get a sense, I think, of exactly what went into the operations here. And also, as I'm looking at it now, after having reflected on this for a few months, it reminds me of some of the interesting miniature towns that you find around the world. They're popular in Germany. So many cultures and nations around the world where people are excited to see things in miniature form. And there have been interesting academic books that have been written on the idea of the miniature and what the miniature suggests about us in existential, political, economic, cultural, and even social senses. And so that's certainly a reflection I have as I look at a little more of my footage here from my visit in Orlando. The excitement of seeing something in a miniature form, and you do get this sense of scale. You get this sense of being able to see something, from a perspective you normally wouldn't. If you tour the White House, of course, in a one-to-one sense, you get a sense of scale of the place. But then this is another way to experience it in the more miniature form. Some interesting Christmas decorations there as well. I guess their scale doesn't necessarily match up with the scale of the White House itself, but just a lot of cool, curious, and eclectic things as I reflected on, or as I reflect now actually on my visit to the President's Hall of Fame. And I guess I was so interested in Barney Fife. We come back to Barney Fife here at the end, and I'm not sure what the video there was, but I think this was describing the Discovery show that in part featured this particular model on their television series. Okay, and as we're closing our visit here, we see some additional reflections here of FDR and all the memorabilia that you can see collected in the space. And because I got obsessed with this, I'll have to do one more shot of me taking photos of myself. I was imagining as I was doing this that I was in one of those monster movies and I was a giant creature, or a giant human, I guess in this case, presumably. And I'm peering into the White House, waving at all of you. So, a good place to stop, I think, on our tour here of the President's Hall of Fame in Orlando, Florida. And I hope you enjoyed the tour today and had an opportunity to reflect on some of the interesting features in this museum. And please come back then for additional video features of the Immersive Worlds Handbook.